or just like that she um uh so like in certain situations she finds it really hard to like talk to other people because she thinks like of what might happen. They, you know, like she might say something stupid, like they're going to think she's a nuisance, or like all these different kind of like emotions for her, I think, coming back down to like not feeling good enough. And then so when she was younger, she had, I think, like home was not a very nice place for her. And her dad, she was like, she had to really intensely play the piano and stuff, and her dad used to really push her. I think there was a lot of like unhappiness between her mum and her dad. But when she was around about 13, she got sectioned because she was really severely like a really bad eating disorder, and she was harming herself for like a while. So I think she gets kind of, now she has like, when she has down days, she gets that feeling of like fear in like not trusting herself that she could go back to doing those things because she knows it would make her better, but feel better. But obviously she's come so far that I don't think she would. But
how old is she now?
She's about 22, maybe 21, 22.
Okay. So obviously that was quite a traumatic time. How old was she when she went to hospital?
I think she was about 13, 14. I think it went on for quite a while till she was like 16ish.
So that was probably kind of a cry for attention because she wasn't really probably getting it at home and she wasn't being seen and heard. What you'd need to do, because that was quite a traumatic time, she probably doesn't want to go back and remember that time. Because that, you know, being sectioned in hospital is traumatic in itself. Like you're basically locked in a hospital, you and she's probably now identifies herself and sees herself labeled as like damaged in some way. What you'd need to do is you'd need to take her back to that 13, 14, which might be hard. It would be hard.
That's what happened though, because we first of all went back to a memory where she was about 8 in her house, which was again like she was being made to play the piano, and like, and then she was like, I feel like there's another memory that's like conflicting with this now. And then so then we went to that memory, and that was her at 13. She was at home, I think she was 13, around about that age, and she was still at home and being made to play the piano again, but she was refusing to do it. And then she went to her room, and because there was a lot of stuff coming up before when we were doing a conversation about her feeling like she'd rather spend time on her own than be in like situations. Then anyway, we got up to this point where she was like, she walked back up to her bedroom where she was alone. And then when I was saying to her, how does that feel to be alone? That's when she started to get really upset.
Yeah, because she's probably lonely deep down, because it felt safe for her to be alone. But that, you know, our core beliefs we've talked about, there's probably a lack of control there where she was made to do a certain thing. You've kind of been thrown in at the deep end then. Suicidal, you know, thoughts, eating disorders is the hardest one. So you've kind of not gone in on an easy route, but you can help her. But leading up to that 13, 14, there will be a lot to go through, probably between the ages of 5 and up to like 12 before that. But she will be resisting doing that. But good that you got an ab reaction out of her. Did she say she felt better?
Well, after she was feeling like she got like really emotional for a bit, but then I spoke to her today and she said she just felt really drained after it. So I don't want to like make her feel worse. Like,
no, I know. We'll just say that's normal. Just say, well, we're just reframing old memories, and the way you can suggest it to people, because it is traumatic, and it's go back to all your traumatic past. Just say, well, when you were that young, you didn't really know how to process that, so you just process it as an adult now.
Yeah.
You're just processing old memories that have been suppressed and repressed, so it's going to be a drain because it's been stuck there for so long. So it's a good thing that you feel drained, but give it time, let your mind recover from it, and maybe we can do some more. But there's no pressure to do any regression. We can just see where your mind goes.
Okay.
You know, that's quite a big thing to be sectioned at 13, 14. But it sounds like she didn't have any control over her own life, and she, you know, she was put under a lot of pressure. Did she go to an all-girls school?
I think so, yeah.
So eating disorders, you will kind of get them in all girls schools because they all kind of compete against one another, and
Yeah.
her way of it was just her way of dealing with it. But there would have been a big build up towards that, but nothing that can't be treated. You've just been thrown in at the deep end. But
I'm just scared of making her feel worse about it.
You won't make her feel worse. Oh, that 13, 14-year-old needs to know that there's nothing wrong with her. She hasn't done anything wrong. It was her way of coping at the time. We're going to do work on inner child work today. You can take her away from that. You can create her somewhere safe that she can just relax, that she's in control. We'll kind of work more on the inner child work today because we've kind of done a little bit on regression, but we've not focused completely on the inner child stuff. So we'll do that today and it'll all come together.
Okay, cool.
And that's people's worries, you know, that you'll make people feel worse, but you don't. You just, it's the way you frame it to people, and people be like, I don't want to go there, I don't want to go there, but the very fact that you've been repressing and suppressing that for so long is causing your symptoms.
I did try and tell her that, because she said, like, I feel like I've tried to forget those memories so much that, like, I just don't want to, like, we're going back there. Basically, she's like, you know, she feels like she's doing really well, and she is, like, how far she's come, but like she still has these massive, she just puts herself down so much, like, so obviously all of that stuff is still,
by trying to forget, she's suppressing and repressing. So if you kind of explain it like a pressure cooker and just say, like, you just process those old memories, that's all we're kind of doing, and you've already been through it, you've already lived through it, so there's no harm in going back and reframing it. People can be resistant though, especially when you're using like volunteers, because it's like they're, you know, they've not come to you as like a, right, I'm going to sort this out, this needs to be sorted. So it's and like,
she said that as well. She was like, I'm scared. She said, I don't feel like I really need any, like, you know, anything sort of thing. And obviously she's helping me, but I don't know. I would love to be able to help her, but I'm also scared I'm gonna, like, make her feel like shit.
You can't make her feel worse. That's why, you know, if you've all started your insurance is so low because you can't do any harm. It's just knowing really what to say. But her coping mechanism for that time was shutting herself away and being on her own. And she was probably, obviously, I would guess, just from experience, that she stayed away from other people because she felt competitive against other people. And she compared herself a lot to other people, and she didn't feel good enough, and this. So when she's around other people now, she's still comparing herself.
She thinks she's going to be a nuisance. That's something that keeps coming up, and that's something that I think her dad used to tell her.
Yeah, well, we could always get her in. It depends how much she wants help. We could always get her in for a demo. But I think you just keep working with her, but do it gently.
Yeah, I think, because I saw her the week before, but I didn't really know what I was doing then, to be honest, and I didn't really get anything from that. But this time was like really different. So
good, and the more you do it, the more practice you will get. Okay, any questions, anyone, before we start?
No.
And well done, Lulu. It's not easy sometimes. It's a hard, but you'll find people will come for a simple thing. Oh, it's social anxiety, and then you'll find out you have a whole bag of worms, and you're like, what am I dealing with here? This is what I say. You will always feel out of your depth for a long time. And get to that thing where you've just dealt with everything, and you become kind of unshockable. So it's not an uncommon thing either. So it's like I said, it's not. I'm not surprised at all by it, because it's, you know, it might feel like quite shocking and uncommon to you, but it's not an uncommon thing. Sorry, go on, Michelle.
No, I did a regression on Sunday with a friend who was just interested in regression, not for herself actually, but for a member of her family. So she said, oh, show me how this works. Well, hypnosis actually. Show me how this works so I can explain it to this member of her family. And so
we get you up. Hang on. Oh, what have I done? Right, yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Carry on.
So anyway, we did a regression to a happy place. I thought that's, nice and safe, and she could just see the chatting and everything. We did all of that. And so she went back, and so I'm expecting her to find a happy place. She explains it, she'll describe it, we'll all be jolly and happy, and then she can come back with that feeling positive. So if we get there, and she is 4 years old, she's with her father, she's on his lap, they're making Christmas decorations out of egg cartons, and they've got the glitter and the glue and the bows and everything, and she's having the most fantastic time, and she is already crying because she's so happy. Her father has passed away. And so she's very, very happy. And I said, is there anything you want to say to your dad? And she says, I love you, I just love you so much. Always did. And I said, oh, and what does he say back to you? Expecting him to say, I love you, pop it or whatever. And the response was not at all what I'd expected. It was, she was providing herself with information she must have known, but she needed to hear. And he said to her, he said, I love you and always will, but you have to be open to be loved by other men. And she really,
that gives me tingles. I don't know why.
And because I didn't say a word, he said it to her, and she was very, very emotional. And I just said, and I was just trying to keep her safe. You are safe. You're protected. You are secure. Your daddy's there. And how do you feel? And she said, and I did not know this. I know the woman. I don't find her. She's never mentioned it. She said, I've been having an affair with a married man for 20 years. And she said, I've kept his marriage together, basically. And I thought, whoa, daddy had a message for you. And then we brought that to an end of him saying he loved her. She said again, she loved him. They had a moment together. And then I brought her back out of it. But I was just doing a regression to a happy place so she could talk about it. I've spoken to her since, and she has been good. She's been really good. She said she's really, she needed to hear it. So she's been dealing with it very personally. She wants another session, but I'm waiting for her to live this for the moment.
Yeah, give it a couple of weeks, like I said. Let it all kind of settle. So you will find that people's minds, when I first started, one of the first clients I had, I took him into regression. He couldn't sleep, and he was walking around in the middle of the night because he couldn't sleep, and as soon as I put him into hypnosis, he started just bawling, crying, massive abreaction, then had this whole conversation with his mum that had died, and this, and I was like, I don't really know what's going on, but it's helping him. Like, people's unconscious minds, like, sometimes just need guiding. We unconsciously, they're so powerful, our unconscious mind, and we all always know what we need to hear when we let go of our ego, and we let go of our conscious thinking and our rational thinking. We always kind of know. So it is really powerful, and sometimes you might not really know what's going on, but if it's helping that client, it's, sometimes you won't even really hear people. I remember Andrew saying he had a client, he was mumbling away, didn't know what he was saying, and then he woke up, was like, not woke up, came round, and then he was like, I feel amazing, and then and Andrew was like, I don't really know what I've done here, but so your unconscious mind is really powerful, and it can like figure things out. So all you're really doing is guiding that person, but you don't really know what you're going to get. Sally, how have you been with your nail picking?
Oh, interesting, because I haven't at all been making my nails, and I kept looking at them going, oh, I see that, I'm not doing it. And so somehow it worked. I mean, I didn't feel really differently at the time, but just
amazing. Well done.
Yeah, okay. So I have a list of other things to work on now.
Yeah. So, maybe I should talk people how we went through that quickly. Mm-hmm. So Sally had, hang on, Kathy's waiting. We'll tell Kathy the good news.
Yeah.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, Mike. We haven't said hi to Mike.
Hello.
Hello, Mike. Hi. Hello, Kathy.
Hi, Kathy. We were just talking about you.
Oh no! But how fresh I am.
So Sally, Sally hasn't been picking her fingers.
Oh, that is brilliant news.
I'm really pleased. I was going to tell you today, Kathy.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well done.
So how we did that, everyone, was we obviously did a regression to the first time Sally remembered picking her nails. And it was something that, how old were you, Sally? I can't remember, 8, 7?
Yeah, in elementary school, middle school.
Elementary, kids school. And it was kind of like, where did you get that from? And it's like, oh, well, everyone was doing it. My mum was doing it. Kids at school were doing it. And so I was helping Kathy a little bit.
A lot.
Yeah, but it's like, it's knowing that it was never your idea. It was never your thing. So give it back. And it was like, oh, yeah, it wasn't my idea. We can give it back now. And what would that feel like? And we kind of did a little bit more. You'll actually be able to watch it on, I've sent off the videos. It's a good job we recorded that one, actually. I sent off the videos to be uploaded, so you'll all be able to record it. But so when nail biting is a habit that's just picked up from parents, it's really easy to fix because you just give it back. And we'll talk a little bit about that today, about giving feelings back. So it's just reframing, saying, so that was never your idea. It wasn't your idea to ever bite your fingers or pick your nails or suck your thumb. And they were like, oh, no. So what would you tell that little girl? Well, you don't need to do that anymore. That's not your idea. And, reframe it like that. But you'll be able to watch how Kathy did it in the video. But I would suggest you all watch that because it's quite common with nail biting and nail picking that it was just picked up from parents. But if you think about it, if something as simple as nail picking can be picked up from parents, what else can be? Emotions, feelings, baggage. So that's just a very tangible way of looking at the deeper stuff that we're going to go into now. Oh, I'm pleased about that, Sally. Well done, Kathy. Okay, so we haven't started the slides yet, so you've come just in time. Okay, so we are on module 7 now. It was a short module, module 6. This is a slightly longer module, so it might take us a couple of weeks, but we'll work through it. What we're doing now is we're bringing everything together. We're bringing everything together. We are stuff that you've already known and you're already probably doing, but just reaffirming, going into a little bit more detail, things that you've already been doing. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask them as we are going. So last week we talked about the secret of resistance and why people resist, how to deal with resistance, fluid questioning. Are you all feeling confident and happy with fluid questioning now? It's getting a bit easier.
Yeah.
It takes practice, but I think you will get in there. You've all had lots of experience, practice in regression analysis, following the feeling back, when to prompt and when to be quiet. That can be hard. Regression using fluid questioning. We looked at false memory syndrome, and we did the direct eye-to-eye emotive suggestions thing, which we'll try when we meet in person, because like I said, it's a bit more difficult to look in someone's eyes when you're on Zoom without looking or feeling weird. But I think a few of you have tried that and liked that, so that's good. So what we're going to look at in this module is the importance, again, of working with the client's belief system. A little bit more detail into the inner child therapy, because we've looked into it, because I wanted you to start using it, but we're going to go into a little bit more detail now. And the relevance of raw emotive content, expressing the unexpressed and empowering the inner voice. Which will all be explained, and how to put it all together, know what you're aiming for step by step, how to use parts therapy within hypnosis, and we won't get onto that today, that'll be later, and the fist of sand technique if you reach a dead end. Parts therapy can be useful, and there's lots of different ways you can get around. Parts therapy can be good if you have a client that's resistant to going back and doing inner child work. And using metaphors can be useful as well, so we can kind of go over all that. So it's really important, as you've probably understood now, and you're all probably, you know, realizing that working within the client's belief system. So it's not your belief system, it's not what you believe about things, that you have to work with the client's belief system. And rather than telling them this is what you need to believe, it's kind of asking them questions to start to question their own beliefs. Because when we start questioning our beliefs, it starts to place a little doubt in our mind. It's when we first start questioning, is Santa Claus real or not? It's like, oh, we just, you know, I'm not sure if that's real or not. We just start to question them, because people will have a real emotional investment in their internal reference points, and we always unconsciously want to prove that our beliefs, rightly or wrongly, are true. We spend our lives looking for confirmation that our beliefs are true. Lulu's client or friend saying she's a nuisance, she will automatically always be looking for confirmation that she's a nuisance and that she's saying something stupid, and she'll go out and she'll say, see, I knew I was a nuisance, and then that belief gets stronger and stronger and stronger. So people are very emotionally invested in their belief systems because they've never known any different, and they've never challenged their belief systems before on an unconscious level. And they may have tried to challenge them on a conscious level, but because they've been in a normal everyday brain state and their logical mind still, you know, playing out, they've not been able to properly get to the root cause and work with it on a deeper level. If you challenge those beliefs directly, you will come up against resistance, which, you know, like I said, what happened with Lulu, that fear, that person has felt that way for so long, that person has been that way for so long, that a lot of fear will come up. So you just have to work with their belief system and work around their belief system with very clever questioning, very clever indirect questioning that just gets them to start to question and unravel their beliefs. And as you kind of do this, you lead them out of one belief system into another. You can't just say to someone who's thought their whole life that they're not good enough and a nuisance, no, well, you're not a nuisance, you are good enough, because they're just not going to believe that. You need to unpick it, you need to unwind it, you need to find out the initial sensitizing event where their mind got programmed in that way, and you need to just rationalize that in their mind, because that's a very irrational, you know, she's obviously not a nuisance, she's probably a lovely girl, but it's her rational part of her mind that is believing that, and she will believe that to her core because that's all she's ever known. If she went to a memory back when she was really young, you know, she's believed it since she was that child. So like I said, they will be very deeply ingrained, these beliefs, so it's just being aware of that. And if they make a statement of fact about something, a well-placed question will often elicit the desired response instead of an intellectual discussion. So like I said, oh, well, I'm just a nuisance. People are believing that, and she's saying that as a fact, when in fact it's not a fact. So it's just being like, well, you're not. It's not saying, well, you're not a nuisance to them straight away. It's just listening to them and trying to work with the questioning, work with the ideas, and do the work that we're going to do to bring about a change to that belief system. But it has to be their idea. It's always better when it's their idea. It can't come from you. So you're just vanilla, remember? You're just vanilla. You're just a facilitator for that. Like Michelle said, I didn't really do anything. She came up with that all herself. So you have to let them be, you have to be vanilla. You have to just ask the right questions, the right prompts. You're just there to prompt them and lead them in a way where they're going to change those beliefs themselves. Does that make sense? Give me a yes, someone.
Yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes, yes.
Good. So the clients will say statements of facts, like I said, and well-placed questions will elicit desired response. So a client, I'm stupid and worthless. What makes you think that? It's true. Everyone tells me. Really? Who's everyone? Well, my mum. Oh, and do you believe her? Well, yes, she tells me a lot. I believe her. Well, I guess it's not true. It will depend. There might be a bit more resistance there. It might not be as easy as that. And I know if you watch back on the videos, we did something with Kathy. Kathy, if you don't mind me just saying, it's just letting that little girl know rationally, maybe this is mum's issues. Maybe this is mum's view of the world, and maybe it's nothing to do with that little girl at all. And it's just explaining to that client on a logical rather than emotional level. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
And the thought of questioning what mum said, you know, when we're young, we don't have any. We think our parents are the world. We don't have anyone else to look up to. We believe everything they say and we take it on to be true because we have no other reference points. We don't know anything else. We have no one else to tell us these things. So and especially if something, you know, a child is continuously told that will get deeply more and more ingrained. So it's not saying directly, well, you're not stupid and worthless, you're not, you know, it's just questioning. We're unleveling, questioning. And we've already done this, you know, we've already been doing this. It's just explaining this on a deeper level, what you're doing and why you're doing it and why it's so important to get the client to give you the information themselves. And can I just make sure my battery's not going to die here? Hang on, let me just plug my thing in. 1 minute. You want a client ideally to think something is their idea because it will be more powerful. It obviously will be your idea. You'll know how to direct them, and the more you do it, the more experienced you'll get. But coming from them is so much going to make a deeper impact, a greater impact. So you can't really I said before, this is why it's important to make notes. I don't know how you're all doing taking notes in the sessions with the clients when you're gathering information. You can't really use your words in their language if it's not something they're used to. You know, if you suddenly said, no, you're fun, energetic, and the life and soul of the party, if that's not their language, that's going to be quite like, oh, I never thought that, I never wanted to be that. And that's your belief system, or it's just your ideas of what they would want to be rather than their own words. So like I said, sometimes the less you say, the better. And the less, you know, as well, we don't want to false memories, but the less you project onto the client, onto the session, the better. Because we just want to keep it their belief systems. We're not assuming anything. We just want to use their own language in their vocabulary, using their belief systems. So that's why it's so important to take notes and to write down the words that they're saying, because those words that they're saying will resonate more with them than any words that you will come up with. Okay.
Yeah.
So raw emotive content. So we use this to describe the actual emotion someone's feeling, totally uncensored, unedited, just to express how they really feel. So for an example, a client might say, I feel annoyed. Okay, So we know how to kind of get to that bottom of annoyed. In what way annoyed? I feel rage, I feel hatred, I feel betrayal. So a good way of doing this is, I know you've all started taking notes, and I've shown you how I take notes. I will do little bullet points. So say I'll write annoyed, they'll put annoyed, and I'll say in what way annoyed, or give me 3 words that would explain that annoyed feeling. I always like things in threes for some reason. And then I just put rage, hatred, betrayal, because that's going to be an old feeling, that hate, betrayal, rage, that's old stuff. That's not new stuff. So you want to keep, we've already learned how to do this, we've already been doing this, it's just layering, finding the raw emotive content. And I've already given you examples of this where we just keep questioning people, we get down to the layers, but we want 3 really good emotions that they're feeling. So annoyed, it's not really a raw feeling, annoyed, is it? So just feeling rage, which is anger, and hatred, and feeling betrayed, they're raw, strong emotions. So we kind of want to get to that really deep emotional thing, but you will get that if you keep with the clean questioning, and they're the feelings that you regress on. But I always like to go for 3 strong feelings, and later on I'll show you how I give that feeling a metaphor of what that feels like if we were to give it a metaphor, and then you check back, see if the metaphor's still there, if we were to give it a shape or color. But we're not going to do that yet. But that's a really powerful way of checking to see if that feeling's still there. But I'm not going to keep jumping ahead with you because I keep doing that a lot. But we want to keep digging until you get to that raw, emotional, unedited content. And this is where we hit the core beliefs and the core ideas. That's old stuff. We've learned now that it's nothing new. If somebody keeps experiencing something over and over in their life, like, oh, I keep feeling annoyed with angry and hatred and betrayal, that's old stuff that's going to keep repeating in their adult life because that's something they experienced when they were young. And this is when I said you're like detectives. I keep saying that. I've said that a lot, and that's why you need your pen and paper. And you don't need to write out sentences of what people said. We want the key words, key emotions, key things. We just write them down in little bullet points, and then you use those words back to them. And when you help someone find the memories or ideas that reflect the core beliefs, and you express those emotional content, that's when you have the strong ab reactions. So you wouldn't regress on a feeling of annoyed, for example, because we can feel annoyed by anything in real life. But to feel rage, anger, hatred, betrayal, that's deep stuff. That's not something that you feel everyday life, going to the supermarket in a queue or whatever it might be. Okay, so giving you lots of tools here to use when you have someone in the hypnotic state. And something that's very powerful is called expressing the unexpressed. So, for example, if you had a child, say Lulu, for example, has her client, and she's a child, she's been told to play the piano, she's been put under a lot of pressure, she's been told she's a nuisance. She didn't really know how to deal with that as a child, and she had probably a lot of feelings that she kept suppressed and repressed at that time, and she didn't express how she was feeling. So there was so much power in expressing what was not expressed at the time, and expressing old feelings, old memories that come up. So like Michelle said as well, I always like it when you give me examples because it gives me examples to work with. She was expressing the unexpressed to her father, and the father never had said to her, it's okay for you to be loved by other men. You know, she was expressing, he was expressing the unexpressed. And you know, there's a lot to be said in using the imagination, using the creative mind. This is why I like calling it a creative mind method, because we're using our imagination to reframe scenarios and reframe ideas and reframe beliefs. But to have somebody verbally say out loud rather than just thinking in their own mind will be so much more powerful. And like I said, using their own language. And don't jump in too quickly when you're doing this, because you want to allow the full details of the event to be revealed and a full reaction to take place. So try not to rush. But an example of this would be, so we have Lulu with her dad. What would you like to say to dad now, if you're a little girl, or with the older you? What would you like to say to dad? What do you think dad would say to you if he knew he put you under so much pressure and he'd hurt you so much? Little things like that. What would you say? What would they say? It's just expressing what you never said to that person at that time, because you were too young to be able to know how to even comprehend it. That makes sense?
Yes.
We can do examples of this if you would like. So we identify the feelings. Yeah, I think we should do an example if anybody's wants to volunteer. So identify the feeling or emotion someone's feeling but not expressing. So we'd use clean language and we just ask them, be there once again. So say someone's feeling, let's use the anger, let's use the betrayal, let's use the rage. Well, rage is similar to anger. I'd get someone to say something different. I'd say, well, that's similar. What else do you feel? Maybe fear. Well, there's always fear under anger. So if we follow that feeling back, if you could go back in time, back through the year to the first time that you felt that way, it's an old feeling. Follow it back through the years, and remember, back as you go back. You can always go deeper and deeper and further and back. And if this client had said to you that it's what dad had said, oh no, we could use your nuisance. He always used to call me a nuisance. So if you could be there once again, what would you really like to say? If he's making you play the piano, if he's telling you a nuisance, what would you really like to say? And the client starts to tell you and say, don't say it to me. You can say it to the person. If they're resisting, you could say, what would a little girl who was in that position like to say to her dad if they resist? But like I said, it's more powerful if you could say, if you were that little girl and you had the older you by your side holding your hand and you weren't on your own anymore, what would you like to say to your dad? Imagine that person's in front of you and tell them exactly how you feel. Just be there. What's on your mind right now, and tell them. And if they need help, you can say, you make me feel angry, you make me feel scared, you put me under pressure, you make me feel like I'm a nuisance, you make me feel whatever it might be. And tell them you don't need to be polite. Sometimes we can get a few swear words going in, and sometimes people quite get a relief of telling people to F off, depending how bad it's been. But tell them we don't need to be polite. Sometimes it's not to people's parents, sometimes it's bullies at school. But keep it going, working through the thoughts and feelings that come up until the client has nothing really left to say, and then just check how they're feeling. And I always like to say, especially if it's bullies in school or if it's, parents, try and bring in a level of understanding. We did this with Kathy last week. It's like, maybe this is your mum's issue, and this is how mum was given love when she was a child, and she didn't know how to love in the way that you needed to be loved. Maybe, what do you think? And they can be like, oh yeah, and they can be like, it's not your fault, and they can tell that little girl it's not your fault, because that's often what happens. We only can love to a capacity that we've been loved, and we can only show love and how we've been shown loved, you know. And back in the day, you know, there was this strict Victorian, going back to Victorians, there was a very strict parenting style of children should be seen and not heard, and it's kind of been filtered down through the years, and we're kind of only now we're learning to, you know, mindful parenting, and we're learning to, you know, be more considerate of our kids and their feelings. But lots of kids were, you know, told to be seen and not heard, and you know, and nobody's a perfect parent, so nobody's going to get it right all the time. So, and I think it's always useful to say, well, no, obviously it's not that little girl's fault. That little girl didn't, you know, mum had her own stuff to deal with, which you can probably understand now that you're an adult. And we can give that feeling back, which we'll go on to next, which can be really powerful as well. And I always find it quite useful and can be quite a good way of getting an ab reaction to say to clients, if your mum or dad knew how much this affected you and how much this hurt you, what would they say back to you? A lot of 50-50. Sometimes you get, I'm so sorry, I love you, they give you a hug, they figure it out. Sometimes they'll be like, they just wouldn't care. And then if you get a just wouldn't care, be like, well, whose issue is that? If somebody's saying, treating a child that way, and they're saying they just don't care, whose issue is really that? And then they'll be like, it's their issue, it's not this little girl. So it's like, well, that little girl can give her the love and support that she needs, that she didn't get, knowing that it's not her fault. Like I said, we're just introducing logic that child couldn't process at that time. That child doesn't know that, you know, mum's probably been treated like this as a child, or dad's probably been treated like a child. Dad's probably given her strict piano lessons because he was probably treated like that, or he wants her to be successful so he can brag to his friends, or he doesn't feel good enough himself and he's projecting that onto his child. There can be lots of reasons, but, you know, that little girl, that little kid can take these things on. Okay. So giving a feeling back. And we did this with Sally and her nails. She was picking her nails. It wasn't her feeling. It was just mum's feeling. It was a person at school that was doing it. Okay, so imagine just giving it back to them, because it was never your idea. So you can also do this with feelings. So if someone's feeling angry and their mum was angry all the time, smashing plates around the house, and she was drinking a lot and this, give the feeling back, you know. It was never your feeling. It was never your idea. You picked this up from a child. Sometimes a client won't want to give it back to their parents because they don't want them to have it, which then you kind of work around that and say, kind of just let it go, heal it, or let's let it go for your mum as well. So you kind of do a healing generational thing.
I think that I skipped on a bit. I think I was watching something of Andrew's, because I did actually do this with my friend, giving back the feeling.
Yeah, perfect.
And but when I was trying to get her to give the feelings back to her dad,
yeah,
she was like, and then I was saying, how does that feel? She was like, I just can't, like, I just don't have that type of relationship with my dad. Like, she's like, he just wouldn't even, like, she just couldn't do that. So I just kind of walked away from that. I wasn't really sure what to do.
Yeah, well, it's like, it doesn't need to be for him. It doesn't need to, like, you don't need a relationship just to give it back. It's not for him, it's for you. If somebody gives you a present and you don't want it, you can give it back. You don't need to hold on to it. It doesn't matter what the relationship you have is.
Yeah.
So
I think I just kind of was like, I just kind of said, okay, we'll just give it back to him, and then we just walked away, sort of thing, and then did something else. Because
the best thing you could do with that is like, can we forgive him? That's always a big one.
Yeah.
Forgiveness. knowing that he didn't know how to give her the love that she needed. Can we forgive him? And I always like to bring in a little bit of humor, because sometimes this can get a bit deep, especially for, you doing it as a therapist. It's like, bring back the child. Can we let him off the hook? He had a strict upbringing. He just wanted us to play the piano. Can we kind of let him off the hook a little bit? What do you think? And then she might be like, oh, well, I could try that. What would it be like just to let him off the hook and just forgive him? Not for him, but for you. Knowing that he didn't know any different. He didn't know how to give love. Maybe this is how he was treated as a child, and what he must be going through internally to treat the child like this. Can we let
she was saying, like, the first thing she wanted to say to him was, I'm sorry for the way that I was, for being a nuisance again. Yeah. She was still, like, kind of blaming herself for everything.
So what did you say?
I tried to get her to let him know all the way that he'd made her feel, like, and things like that.
So how was she being a nuisance? What was she doing as being a nuisance? Did you ask her?
Just kind of not practicing the piano enough, or like certain things she said, like, I think it's in the chat before, she was saying, like, that her dad in certain situations would, I don't know, if she didn't speak up or if she didn't say things, he'd kind of tell her that she was stupid, or
so
and then I think also, sorry, with the fact that she was, like, hurting herself and not eating, she thinks she was a nuisance, being a nuisance, because all the difficulty that it caused, obviously.
Okay, you sound like you've had a bit of a difficult client there, but it's good. We need the difficult clients to learn. What you'd say is, if you had a little girl sat next to you now, especially because she was resistant to going into inner child, if she wasn't practicing the piano because she would have wanted to be a kid, would that little kid be a nuisance? What do you think?
Okay. Yeah.
And if a little girl isn't feeling loved and safe, and she doesn't know how to express her feelings, and it's never about the food when a child resists or stops eating. It's never about the food. What did she really need at that time?
Yeah.
And then again, if a little girl was sat next to you saying, I just want to feel loved, I want to feel safe, I want to feel accepted, is she a nuisance? Has she done anything wrong? What would you say to her?
Okay.
Maybe she didn't like the piano.
I don't think she did. I mean, she's amazing at it, because obviously she got so high, but it was such a strain on her. Yeah.
But obviously this is Dad's projection onto her.
Yeah.
And did Dad know that it was making her feel this under pressure this much?
I think he did, but from what she says, it's like he did, but he just didn't care.
But if a father knows that he's putting a child under so much pressure that she's going to hospitalize herself by trying to gain control by not eating, is that her issue or his?
It's his.
Yeah.
His, but...
So you need to get her to understand that that's nothing to do with her. She's not a nuisance. She's just a kid. She's just 8. And she deserves to have a childhood. She deserves to make her own decisions, and she deserves to do what she wants. And she obviously lost that. She didn't really have a childhood.
No.
Does that help?
Yeah.
It's good that that's come up, because it does. It's never easy. And this is why lots of people steer away from regressions, because you're navigating through what's like a maze, because people will resist. This is resistance, but this is what we need to work through.
Okay.
And people's parents won't always be like, oh my goodness, yes, I'm so sorry I gave you this lifelong eating disorder, please forgive me. They won't always be like that. But that's not her stuff. That's not her fault. But we need to let Dad off the hook. I don't know why I like that expression so much, but let's let him off the hook. Let's just feel what it would feel like just to be a child again, and let them off the hook, because that kid just wants to be a kid. and let her feel what it would feel like to make her own choices, to go out and play, to not have to play the piano, or decide that she wants to play the piano for herself, because when she's older she's going to be really good at it and she's going to enjoy it, or maybe she doesn't, I don't know, but it needs to be her choice. You need to give her the element of control and choice back, which she didn't have, which sounds like why she didn't eat is because she didn't have a feeling of control.
Yeah.
Just guessing.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That's okay. It's good that it's come up, because it's never, it can be clear, it can be, clean sailing, but lots of people won't want to give back the feeling, especially if it's anger. Mum's got enough anger, I don't want to give her more anger. It's like, well, let's just imagine it was never yours. We can give it back. If they don't want to give it back, we'll just let it go. But giving it back would probably be the best, especially if it's a bully. If someone's been bullied at school, giving stuff back to people love throwing it back in their face. People love doing that. So giving your feeling back to a bully at school is always a good one. Okay, so very often you giving the feeling back will create and accelerate the idea, letting go of the old feeling, and create a sense of justice or peace, so that person can move on.
Can I ask a quick question, Fiona?
Of course.
So you talk about like letting someone off the hook, someone who's wronged you or who's done something.
Yeah.
If it's like, obviously it's different every time, and there's some degrees where it's someone might feel like their parents didn't love them in the way they needed, or something like that. But if it's something like a relationship, or like somebody has done something wrong and you feel really wronged and hurt and betrayed by them, if that's something that's like so deep rooted and an adult has carried around for so many years, what's the benefit of us encouraging them to like let them off the hook?
Give me an example.
Well, let's say it was like an ex relationship and you were hurt and betrayed by them. Surely like the last thing you'd want is to like just let them off the hook and let them go. But
who are you hurting by holding on to that resentment? Them or you?
Yourself. So is it just the like letting go of everything, all the resentment, all the badness, just let go?
Do you remember my little diagram? My one that levels of consciousness. Hang on, let me. Do you remember this?
Oh yeah.
Who are you hurting when you're holding on to anger?
Always yourself.
Always. And are you going to change anyone?
No.
And can you ever be responsible for anyone else's behavior?
No.
Only how you react to them. And people only ever have power over you in how you react and act to them. So people are always going to do us wrong. People have their own shit going on. People are damaged. People are going to hurt people. But it's how you react to that which will determine how you move on. And it's knowing it's nothing personal. We can't take things personally.
Yeah, logically I really understand it, and I see how it makes sense, but I feel like if I don't know, maybe that's just a me thing, I would struggle to just like let go.
Is it a personal thing?
I don't know, I was just thinking about Lulu's client who felt like, who'd obviously feel so much resentment towards her dad, or I don't know what she feels, bitterness, or I don't know, I just feel like, would it not be hard to just let that go?
But if that little child didn't need approval from her dad anymore, and she made her own decisions, had her own choices, had her own autonomy, and she didn't need that, it's a lot easier than you think. Obviously it's deep rooted, it's hard, we want our parents' approval, but it's knowing that it's not personal. It's nothing that little girl's done.
Okay, so even if you just get to like a slight shift of understanding that it's not personal.
Because like you said, that little girl's, I'm a nuisance. I'm sorry for being a nuisance. She believes she's a nuisance. She believes it's her. And if you think about that diagram I showed you, guilt and shame are at the bottom. Guilt's when we think we've done something wrong. Shame is the lowest. It's when we think we are wrong. Fundamentally, that little girl thinks she's flawed in some way. She thinks she's a nuisance.
Yeah.
And even at a 22-year-old, she's still wanting that approval from her father. Her adult brain hasn't quite kicked in yet. She's still living in a little girl mode.
Okay.
Can I just ask, so going back to what Hattie said about, say, for instance, an ex in a relationship, because I struggle with this, with the whole, the story of Fiona with John, etc. I think I still struggle with it. So if somebody has got that with an ex-partner or ex-husband or whatever, how doing it in the regression, how are you're they're in the regression at their age when they are maybe in the abusive relationship. I mean, how does that relate to them, being as a child?
So say, for example, somebody's attracting an abusive relationship in their adult life. It's probably, a reflection of how they experience love and relationships as a younger child. So knowing that, recognizing that, seeing that, and then knowing and bringing that information into their life now, and knowing why they attracted that, knowing it's nothing personal. It's hard sometimes to forgive and let people off the hook. Otherwise, we'd all be doing it. But you're never going to gain. You're never going to move on with your life if you're holding on to resentment and hatred for people. Because like I said, you're not hurting anyone but yourself. That person's happy in their own whirlwind. I always say to people, imagine I'm like a Tasmanian devil. And this is, when I tell I'm getting old and I'm using these metaphors and people don't know what I'm talking about. Imagine a Tasmanian devil. Some kids are like, what? But Tasmanian devil in their own whirlwind of their own self-destruction. That's what people like John are doing. And he's just going to keep living his life like that. And you have to kind of feel sorry for him. You have to feel pity for someone that is living like that, because they're never going to change, and they're going to live their life in this whirlwind, and they're going to cause a whirlwind wherever they go. And you kind of have to get to a point where you're never going to change. But I know I can take control of my responsibility, and I can distance myself from you, and I can attract better, because I know I'm worthy of better, and I know why I attracted you, and I know why I was drawn to you, because of the experiences that I've been through. But I know better now, and I know that love isn't pain, and I know that you don't know how to love me the way I need to be loved, and that's not my fault.
Amen.
Yeah. Is that a bit of a preach?
Yeah.
So if somebody can't love you to the capacity that you need, that's not personal.
Yeah.
Does that help you?
It's just remembering. It's remembering that. It's just, but whilst you're doing it, as from a practical point of view. So, the reason why you get into abusive relationships is because of what you've witnessed or experienced, as a child, etc. But then, so do you go back to there and are you giving that? Is that what you're giving back to, say, your parents, rather than giving it back to, say, John?
Yeah, because it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Dealing with it now, this is why when clients come to you and say, so-and-so said this, so-and-so said that, this is just surface level stuff. This goes back deeper. But what you can do is you deal with the older stuff, bring that knowledge and experience into your life now of how you can deal with your current new circumstances with all this new knowledge and experience. And we need to let John off the hook, because he can do far better than John, and he's going to always be in his own whirlwind of chaos that you can take a step back from. And that's your choice.
I think I have, more or less.
Yeah.
But there's still a few things.
Yeah, but that's probably because some things are still being triggered. But you have to make your peace a priority, and as soon as you do that, life will start changing, and you'll start attracting better things.
It's like that saying, I can't remember what it is, but it's like holding on to hate or resentment for someone else is like you drinking poison and waiting for them to die.
Yeah, that's
Isn't
true.
it? Like if you just hold on to it, they're just like in their own world, don't even, you know.
They don't care.
They don't care.
People don't care. And like I said, there's levels of consciousness. So if people's in their own world, they're just on a lower level of, you know, and I don't want people to think, oh, I'm better, I'm more enlightened than that person, but just knowing that they're not self-aware, they don't know that they're doing it, and you're not going to change someone, unfortunately. And if somebody's felt that way, been that way for, you know, your circumstances, 25 years, John, 40, 50, however many years, they're not going to change because their mind is so deeply wired to think that way. So trying to change them is never going to happen. If you think how hard it is to change yourself, how hard it is to change someone else. So you have to let them off the hook because there's no other way. And you have to just be happy and move on with your life to know that, you know, you don't have to hold on to pain, you don't have to hold on to anger, and you don't have to hold on to resentment. That's a choice.
Okay.
And it's if you are, then it's triggering old stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Make sense?
Absolutely, yeah.
It's easier with a child to let someone off the hook when you get them in a regress state, because I suppose now, if you think about it, you've so many years of experience with John of you know, anger and resentment towards him. But as a kid, it's easier. It'll make sense.
Yeah.
We'll do demos of this.
Okay. Thank you.
Not always easy, the whole forgiveness thing. It took I've got a stepmom that's I've had to learn to forgive. But you know, we have to people, if you just see people as like tests, what can I learn from this and what can they teach me, you grow with these people. Nobody's going to treat you perfectly and lovingly all the time. But you choose. We all attract toxic people. We all do. But you choose who you give your attention to, and you choose what you let into your life. If you've chosen to let something toxic into your life, you need to look at why, and you need to look at reasons, learn from it so it doesn't happen again.
I've got so many friends that this is going to be so useful. So useful for, I can't tell you. Okay.
Well, we've all been there. We've all had sometimes you have to go through you have to have the horrible people in your life to then appreciate the really good ones. Otherwise, if everyone was nice to you all the time, you know, you wouldn't appreciate them as much. Especially if we're used to love being pain, like I said. Okay, so empowering the inner voice, or powering the inner voice. So once a client's been through an abiotic experience, they're very suggestible. They've just released emotion, they've just gone through an experience, they're in a relaxed state, they're very suggestible. So now it's almost like we've removed old ideas. We need to replace those old ideas with some positive ones to replace those old limiting beliefs. So if you've made some notes of how that client wants to feel, or how that client feels now, you can use those affirmations back to them, and you can ask them, how do you feel now? Light is always a good one. If someone says they feel light, we always know we've got a shift. But it could be, I feel safe, I feel happy, I feel free. And you can just use that. You can know feeling safe, happy, light, free, knowing that it's not your fault, you've done nothing wrong, you're loved, you're safe. I said this before, fundamentally we're all the same. We all think that we're so different and all our problems are unique. Fundamentally, at the core of our being, we all want to just feel loved, settled, stable, and safe. So you can use those kind of affirmations. When you kind of know that, you can kind of direct people in that way. So what you kind of do when you get people to express the unexpressed is empower that inner voice. lots of people that little girl didn't probably know how to vocalize how she was feeling, so we can empower that in a voice, and we can give her the element of choice back, which I think she lost. Core belief, I think there's control. She had no control over her life. She felt forced to play the piano. She wanted to please her parents. She wanted to please her father. She didn't have an element of control. So we need to empower that little girl again, that little child. But like Michelle said, when Michelle said her clients, her dad gave her a statement to fact that it's okay. That came from the clients. That will always be more powerful. Michelle was like, it will always be the most powerful. So we want the client to kind of come up with them themselves. So, for example, the clients, I'm beginning to feel and understand now that it's not my fault and I'm a good person. I'm starting to realize that I can trust myself and I can move on now. And you can kind of say, okay, say that again, I'm a good person, I can trust myself and I can move on. When someone says a nice little thing, it's always nice to get them to repeat it and then keep repeating it. Depends how much fun you want to have with it. Like I said, sometimes I try to bring the lightness, and it can get quite heavy sometimes, but you want to kind of, depending on what it is, of course, obviously, but you kind of want them to feel empowered, have a bit of fun with them. So powering the inner voice, look out for I am, I can, I feel as if statements, and I repeat these, write them down. I feel as if. So you can say to yourself, how do you feel now? What does that little girl know that she didn't know before? I've heard a few of you say that, which I was quite proud of you for using, because it's like, what do you know now that you didn't know before? Or you can use it at the end, but it's quite a powerful thing to say. And write them down just so you can keep reinforcing them. And we've done the affirmations before, so you can kind of come up with a little, when you've done the regression, when you've done the ab reaction, they've come up with the stuff themselves. You can kind of just waffle on all the affirmations, all the new things. And remember, just repeat yourself a few times. You can't say things too many times, because the more you repeat them, the more it can kind of go filter into their mind. When you make an affirmation, you're affirming something you believe to be true. So if a client can say these things and feel good about them, it's a good indicator that they're ready to accept their new belief. If there's reluctance or discomfort to saying these statements, it's an indicator that you need more time and there's more ideas to work through. So sometimes you'll notice if a client's like hands are fidgeting, or they're not looking relaxed, or how do you feel about saying that? Oh, well, I still feel this resentment towards my father. Then there's more stuff to do there. It's testing things all the time, but like I said, everything will be different, and some clients will need a little bit more of a push than others, but nobody's completely immune to being redirected in this way. So there's no one you can't work with. It's just knowing how to bypass their resistance, how to bypass their fears. Okay, let me just take a drink because I've done a lot of talking. Has anyone got any questions? Apart from, why am I drinking out of plastic? I do reuse this a lot.
Let you off the hook.
Let me off. Thanks, Kathy. Okay, so it's funny when you start letting people off the hook. When if somebody drives into your traffic, I'm going to just let them off the hook. It's like, I don't know, it just gives you some liberating kind of like, oh, I'm not going to care anymore. I'm not going to take it seriously. I'm just going to let you off the hook. It's does anyone else find it quite a useful thing? Was it just me?
No, I'm always
driving.
Sorry?
Especially driving, I agree.
Yeah.
Otherwise you'd end up like a complete maniac.
Yeah, you have to start letting people off the hook. When you start letting people off the hook. You just don't take things personally.
I always say, well, that's your journey.
Yeah.
Or blessings, because someone said that's your journey sounds a bit accusatory. So we just say blessings, just letting them do it.
My mum feels bad because she used to say to me when I was a child, like, you live in your own little world, Fiona. And now it's like, it's great that you live in your own little world. She feels bad that she said that to me as a kid, because you have to live in your own little world. You can't let people, you know, especially those, as you do this work and you go through this, you kind of let people off the hook, because like, what must you have been through? Or, you know, you kind of forgive people more because you know that they've been through stuff. If someone's loving and kind and a lovely person, you know that they haven't. If someone's bitter and angry and a nasty person, it's like, what must you have been through to make you that way? What a horrible experience. Like, if you're speaking to me like that, what must you be speaking to yourself like? Okay.
But that's the difference, you see, Fiona. That's what you think. Whereas I have my tendencies to open my mouth and say that, which is just not good. Kathy, we need to work on this again. You know, I'm still opening my mouth when I shouldn't.
Maybe you can start saying, Rochelle, do you know what? I'm going to let you off the hook.
I'll try. I'll have blood dripping down from the side of my mouth. Okay, I'm going to practice.
Yeah, but you, Michelle, you say it when you think there's a sense of injustice.
Yeah, so that's obviously true.
Which I think is different.
Yeah, you feel someone's been wronged, and you have to be the one to right it. But you know, we can work on it.
We'll have to work on it.
Okay, so when we experience an emotive incident, and we've done this before, it's the ISE, initial sensitizing event, or a symptomizing event. It can appear that our emotions get locked in at that time. This is, I think, because our prefrontal cortex hasn't yet been developed. We don't yet have the emotional capacity to deal with these situations. Ideas, beliefs, we're like sponges. Between the age of, you might get a regression to 4, actually. I heard you say it was 4, 12, 13-ish. Our minds are like sponges. Things go in with no reference points. Ideas get locked in. And then as we get older, they just stay locked in. And they almost become ingrained, because we look for confirmation, like I said, that our beliefs are true. Don't know why this happens. No idea why we can't rationalize things that happened in our childhood now. But it does. You know, and there's lots of philosophy about this, that, you know, we choose our parents to come into the world to learn the lessons that we need to learn and grow through what we need to go through. And, you know, so we don't know why this happens, but it does. But like we've said before, events in the present, like, you know, someone causing an injustice from Michelle, activate something inside of us, causing the feelings now, influencing behavior. So people say, I feel like a child at times. So that little girl saying, I feel like a nuisance, Lulu's friend, that's a child speaking. That's not an adult. You know, which could be fear, guilt, shame, embarrassment, frustration, anger, all those low levels of consciousness feelings. But that's our inner child speaking. That's not our logic, higher self speaking. That's not our adult self. And like I said, you go to sometimes, oh, was I talking to a client or was I talking to you guys about it? I think it was a client, actually. It was her boss. Then her boss was being triggered and she was being triggered. So her inner child was going against her inner child, and it was just two inner childs against each other. And it's like, you need to be the adult dealing with this inner child now, knowing, recognizing what you're dealing with. But sometimes you can get two people at a level of child and child when they come in, like when they're playful. When they're being triggered, it can be quite, you know, you go to war. Two adults, we want two adults. That's when we get a rational, good relationship. Sometimes we can go into parent mode, or we can have a child, And then that sometimes can happen in relationships where someone's in a child's being triggered, and we're going into parent mode, and we try and heal their inner child. Or sometimes we both go into parent mode. I don't know, there's lots of different dynamics in relationships, but we kind of want to stay away from anything in our inner child being triggered. But it will happen. It does happen for some reason. And the more life experience you've had, the more instability you've had probably as a child, the more material you may have. Even people with the perfect upbringing will have stuff. You know, I remember a girl, you know, posh people problems, but, you know, her trauma was being told by her mum when she was on her horse that her legs looked big, you know, and that's, for her, that's a traumatic experience. It's not trauma that you'd probably associate normal trauma, but for her, you know, going horse riding, being in competitions, and her mum always telling her that her legs were too big, you know. So what's trauma for someone, you know, trauma's different for everyone, but, you know, things stick with us, and that those feelings can get triggered as adults, and they do get triggered as adults. So that's why we have to let people off the hook, because it's their inner child being triggered. It's not their logical, rational mind that exists in their emotional, creative mind. That's why I call a method that I use a creative mind method, because it's not logic. Makes sense? Everyone? Any questions?
No.
And we've put inner child in the context of this training because there's lots of people doing inner child work, but it has to be done with quite, obviously you've seen me, Lou was quite, you know, tentative about it. It has to be done with quite a lot of care, because like I said, anything can happen. And there are many school of thoughts and therapies around this model, but for the purpose of this training, we use regression, visualization, parts therapy, suggestion, and to access that inner child, comfort that inner child, just so we can dissolve and release old feelings so it's no longer locked in. Like that pressure cooker I've talked about before, we release the old emotion that's been suppressed, repressed, so the child doesn't feel like a child anymore. You know, I had a client, he was being very triggered by motorbikes going past and youths being around. He's so triggered by it, and he's like, I feel like a child, like I just get so wound up, and this, and you know, it's not our adult brain that gets triggered, it's our little selves, our younger selves. Yeah, so I would no longer want to feel like a child in an adult's body. Remember, if it's hysterical, it's historical. Okay, so here's a little diagram. So we have a traumatic event when we're a kid. So obviously when we're babies, we don't really start to build emotions yet. Like I said, 4 or 5. Incident happens, gets locked in, just keeps there, still there. As we grow up, we look for evidence that it's true. It can kind of get bigger, like a snowball. It can snowball effect, and it gets triggered. Remember those old models we've used, the library models. Normal everyday life events happen that some people would just brush off, or people wouldn't pay attention to. But if it's triggering an inner child feeling, we're going to react rather than respond. But when the adult resolves the issue of their inner child, they can set them free so that they no longer have that part of them. They're no longer holding on to that suppressed or repressed emotion. And the ideas that we have around those. So it's not really the inner child it's the ideas that little child had when they didn't have any logic. And we're just using the creative emotional part of their mind. So the ideas get stuck with us as adults. We release them. When we release them, we don't have the same emotional response. And this is why you need to let a few weeks in between sessions, because clients won't really realize straight away, unless it's something tangible, like, you know, Sally biting her nails. That's something she can notice directly. But imagine if that had been something a little bit deeper, she might not have noticed. We need to let life happen. We need to let triggers happen. How are you dealing with things differently now? What's happening? What are you attracting? What's happening in your life? What's going on? So that's why it's always good to leave a couple of weeks. Make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is it helpful?
Yes.
Stuff that we've done, but I guess in a more of an in-depth kind of explaining it in a different way. Okay. So this is a simple inner child script. You can make up your own. You know, I don't like you using scripts, but let's go with this. So this is used in a middle of a regression session when we've got to a place where we've found the raw emotive content, and we're assuming the client's already in hypnosis. So you've done your induction, you've done your deepener. Just for now, let the adult you, the one here with me, go back in time. And I always like to say, knowing everything you know now. I always like to put that in. Should have added that in. But back to that place where that little you, that younger, is that little you. Where that little you is that younger you. Let your mind just take you back there. My voice will go with you. Just sense, feel, picture, imagine. So say the first time that you felt this way. So you can sense, feel, picture, imagine walking up to that. And why it's important to say feel, sense, picture, imagine. People will process information differently, and this is something you will learn with NLP. Some people are visual and some people feel things more. This is always like, remember when I said about walking down the stairs? Some people will visualize themselves walking down the stairs. Sometimes people will feel themselves walking down the stairs. So people will process information differently depending on how their mind works. So they can feel, sense, picture, imagine being with that younger you, looking into their little eyes, and what would you let them know? We've already kind of started this, or let them know who you are. I'd say, what would you let them know? What would you say to them? Look into their little eyes. What would you say to them? If it's a traumatic experience, you can take them away from that experience they're in, so they have some peace. What would you let that little, we've already started this. What does that little you need to know? But this is just in the context of taking the you now, the older you, knowing everything you know, remember, knowing everything you know now, back in time to be with that younger you. What would that be like? Just your imagination, just in your imagination. Let them know. There's no logic here. We're not using our logical brain. Logic hasn't helped us so far. Okay. So you can say, I know what it's like to be you. I know what you're thinking. I know what you're feeling. I know exactly what it's like to be you because I am you. We're just different perspectives of the same person. So I know exactly what it's like to be you. And I have come here to help you because I don't want you to feel scared, lonely, upset, afraid anymore. So there's some things we need to take care of, and we're going to take care of them together. And this gives that little child like a sense of stability, a sense of they're not on their own anymore. They feel understood, they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel like they're not on their own. And then we can get some feedback on how the client's feeling. How does that make you feel, knowing that that person's with you? We can get some feedback. You can use the script. I don't use the script. I will go off this script if I do an example, but you can use this. What follows depends on the context. For example, sometimes it will be an inner child, like a parts therapy. We can go on to that. Sometimes it's helping the inner child express the unexpressed, to reframe the situation. Sometimes it's all of this. Sometimes it's saving or rescuing the child if it's a traumatic experience, taking them away from the situation. Even bringing them into the present if they need to. Especially if they've been through trauma. What can be useful is, especially if it's a traumatic event, is say it's abuse or something like that, something quite heavy and serious. Imagine sitting in a theatre screen. So you're sitting in a theatre screen and you're watching this little child go through this experience. And I want you to take that little child out of that screen, out of that movie, and sit her on your lap now. That's a good way of rescuing them. And what do they need to know? And then with this strength, with this confidence, with you by their side, you know, remember, it's your movie. This only exists in your imagination. You can go back into that screen and what would you say or what would you do? You just have to kind of work with what kind of comes up. But if someone's had abuse or something, you can kind of say it's not that little girl's fault. What could she have done or said at that time? She could have kicked him in the face. She could have called the police. She could have told her mum, you know. Reframing it in a bit of a different way. And you can say this is just your imagination now, but it kind of reframes that in their mind of it. They no longer feel like a victim. That's kind of what happens. And that's, you know, Lulu's client feels like a victim. You know, we get stuck in victim mentality. When we can't forgive people, we're feeling like a victim. So we don't want to be a victim. We want to feel in control. Okay, and sometimes it can be a more general regression, free association, or an incident or a memory. There's lots of different ways we can kind of do this, and we'll go through. But the core of it, the essence of it, is kind of all the same. Reframing that little child, taking care of that little child, rescuing that little child, and usually that person will tell you what they need. Sometimes a child doesn't want to be taken away from a situation. They want to reframe the situation they're in and deal with it there and then. But sometimes they want to be taken away. So it just depends. Everyone's different, and that's why you can never plan these things. So, hang on, let me just... Is this all making sense?
Yeah. Yes.
Anyone have any questions?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of information I'm giving you here. But is it all kind of coming together and making it like, oh, okay, I see how that connects to this, and you know, and this is why I take it quite slow, and I like you to do a lot of practice, so that when you already practice this stuff, you can introduce these new kind of techniques quite easily. Okay, all right, no questions?
Nope.
Okay. So when we go on to regression and follow the feeling, we can end up with what seems like quite disconnected territory compared to where we started at original aim. So we start off at one thing and we can go off to a tangent to a completely other thing. But there will always be a connection. There will always be a connection somewhere. Our minds, like I said, our unconscious minds are really powerful. So we will start somewhere and our mind might jump somewhere, and it's like, how is this connected? But like I said, you detectives, you need to find out why our mind's going there and then kind of complete the loop, if that makes sense. I think I might need to do a little demo on this for you, because what the client comes in for is not normally what you're kind of going to regress on, and they might think, why am I going back? For example, again, I keep using Lulu as an example. She's like, has this social anxiety. So why am I going back to when I'm locked in my room and my father's making me play the piano? So it's just completing that loop of like bringing that feeling and dealing with that inner voice and then that child, all that knowledge that you now know. How do we complete the loop to bring all that knowledge into your life now, to bring all that new information into your life now, to deal with this new situation, to deal with this in a different way? So it's like our minds get stuck in old thought processes, and then we just need to like complete that loop. So we're bringing all that information that we know back then into our lives now, and how can that change our perspective? What do we know now that we didn't know before? So powerful that. And you can ask them, you can get them to reinforce them or take away the new ideas. What do you feel now? How do you feel about the idea of going into a social setting? How would it feel if you, you know, whatever it might be, whatever the issue they came into. But it's just bringing the old feeling, making it relevant, realizing the relevant. This is why you're a bit of a detective, because it's like, how is that relevant? How is that? And it might be that, oh, this was the first time that they experienced love, and that's, you know, then love is pain, whatever it might be. It's just completing the loop. It's completing the puzzle, so to speak, and piecing it all together, and using new mantras, using suggestions so they can take them away. But really important, what have you learned now that you can bring into your life now for the concept that they came in for? Otherwise they're going to think it's completely irrelevant. So putting it all together, so the elements of the session of, you know, we've done lots here. Interview whenever we do all these, I'm adding more each time, but hopefully we're managing to keep up. So we interview the clients and look for those emotional hotspots. We use the hotspots as a starting point for the regression. We follow the feeling back. We follow the feelings to memories using fluid questioning. Remember that all clean questioning you can use interchangeably. We look out for the core beliefs and the raw emotive content. So that's anything that makes people cry. If you're going to if somebody's starting to cry when they talk about something, you know you've got the ab reaction. You know you've got the right thing. Use the inner child and go back to connect with the younger self. Have them express the unexpressed to anyone relevant. If appropriate, give them back the feelings, or release the feelings, or whatever you need to do. As the feelings and ideas are released, help the client empower the inner voice and come up with new ideas and new mantras using the do wants and don't wants and all the positive suggestions that they've said throughout the thing. You can repeat them back and complete the loop by having the client connect it back to what they came back in for. So, you know, imagine now knowing that, you know, you're not a nuisance, and that you're safe around other people, and that you're loved, you're safe, and you're not in competition with anybody, you're just as good as everyone else. How different would that now be around other people? How different would that be? Oh, well, I'd probably feel a bit safer, I'd probably be a bit more free, I'd probably, you know, feel a little bit more less competitive, or whatever it might be. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an awareness exercise we can do here, but I don't know. Yeah, let's do the awareness exercise. Okay, so has everyone got a pen and paper?
Yes.
Okay. So let me just stop this share. You know, to see everyone, make sure you're all doing it. Right. Okay, so I want you to all close your eyes. Patty, where's your camera? Where have you gone? We're a man down. Where is she? There she is. Okay, fab. Okay, close your eyes, everyone. Just sit there, close your eyes, take a few deep breaths in and out. Uncross your arms. Just breathing in, breathing out, focusing on your breath. Just for a moment, just taking this time for you. And I just want your mind just to drift for a moment to all the different people in your life. And I don't want you to consciously pick them. I want you to go wherever your mind wants to take you, knowing that your unconscious mind is always working in your favor. Just letting your mind drift to different people in your life. And just notice the meaning that you attach to those different people, the associations that you have with those different people, and the feelings that are connected to those different people. Just feeling your breath flowing through your body in and out. There's no pressure if your mind's not going anywhere. Don't put any pressure on yourself. Let your mind take you wherever you need to go. There's no right or wrong way to do this. It's important to say to clients as well, there's no right or wrong way to do this. There's no pressure. Just allow your mind to relax your body, body to relax your mind, and let your mind drift and lift, thinking of those people in your life and how they make you feel, and those associations, labels, feelings and emotions that you associate with those people. Just for a moment. And whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes, and I just want you to take a moment just to write that down, just to write down whatever came up for you. And I'm just going to nip to the loo. How are you all doing? Is that interesting? What came? Does anyone want to share what came up for them?
Well, I didn't notice that about the two people now thing.
What do you mean?
Where it says on that.
Yes. Two people in your past and your young teenager.
Oh, no. Sorry, that's me just skipping to the next slide. This was the
Oh, all right. They're suddenly panicking.
Yeah, no. Sorry, I didn't realize you could see that. No, sorry. No, it was just what comes up first, and then we're going to go back into the stages. Okay, so what came up?
Well, for me, it was family first, and then it sort of went in concentric circles around, going farther and farther away.
Mm-hmm. Any emotions and things that made you feel?
Well, positive, because it was family. I suppose the further I went away, then they became less positive. Maybe neutral. I don't think I actually thought of anyone where it was a negative feeling.
Okay.
I've definitely barred those from my thought process.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. So it was all positive, thinking of...
Oh, neutral, the most. I mean, there was one person I thought of from a long, long time ago, but it was neutral. It was nothing negative.
Okay. Interesting sometimes what comes up, isn't it?
Mhm.
Okay, anyone else?
I just kind of had like every time I thought of someone, like another, like a word would sort of immediately pop into my head. So I had like mum, sad, Raf, fun. And also when I was thinking of my friend Raf, I was thinking fun, but then I also had the thought of like, she's better than me. And then I had like Poppy, beautiful, Emma, sweet, Alec, lost, Matt, insecure. And then dad was just like, I don't even want to go there.
Mhm. Mhm.
Very good, interesting.
Mhm.
So it's all these unconscious things that we're carrying around that we don't really know is going on.
Mhm.
Mike?
Obviously, family came to me, my mum and my nan. Obviously, my brothers, all positive kind of feelings. Obviously, certain brothers, playful fighting, that kind of thought, but nothing negative really. And then beyond that, ex-girlfriend from kind of school and uni friends, and friends I no longer see anymore from childhood.
Good. Okay, anyone else want to share anything?
Mine was quite a weird mixture.
Yeah.
It was mostly like children and babies, like my nephew and my best friend's twins, and like little kids.
Mhm.
And then one was someone I'm dating, and I put fearful and unsafe, which I feel doesn't bode very well.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, I want you to keep all these notes because it's things that we can kind of maybe work on, little hotspots. Because when you close your eyes and just think like this, it's like all these emotions are running unconsciously in the background without us really realizing. So it's good to, you know, what we do when we kind of do these exercises, we make the unconscious conscious, and as soon as you kind of do that, when the unconscious is conscious, it's easier to work through.
Mhm.
So now we're going to do you've already kind of done this because you've already been making you doing the child work anyway, throw you in at the deep end, but since it's a nice little exercise, we're going to do it. So I want you to think of 2 people you know now, 2 people you knew as a teenager, and 2 people you knew as a child. So you can think of them, you just let your mind kind of go where it needs to go, but 2 people you know now, 2 people you knew as a teenager, 2 people as you know as a child, knew as a child. And then I want you to think about if you're positive, if you feel negative, if you feel a mix of positive or negative, or if you just feel neutral. And like I said before, we're just making an unconscious process. You can use subconscious and unconscious interchangeably. I don't know if anyone notices, but I always use unconscious. Unconscious or conscious, we're just making those unconscious processes conscious, which we've already started doing. We've already started working through these things, but it's just a good little exercise so that we kind of build on our self-awareness, because we all have, you know, past, we all have things we've been through, and the more, like I said, the more we work through our own stuff, the better therapists we become. So and I want just these exercises just to help you understand the emotive meaning that we apply to people, what it means to us, and how it forms and influences our beliefs without us really even knowing it. So 2 people you know now, 2 people you knew as a teenager or in your 20s, and 2 people you knew as a kid. Doesn't matter what age. So when anyone's ready, everyone's ready. Closing your eyes. I don't want you to think of those people straight away. I want you just to clear your mind. Just let any thoughts lift and drift away. Just concentrating on your breath, concentrating on your breathing. Just taking this time away from the outside world, noticing any tension in your body, in your jaw, in your stomach, in your shoulders. Putting a cushion behind your head, head to tatty, if that's a bit more comfortable. Get yourself nice and comfy. And just relaxing. No pressure, any pressure. Just let it lift and drift away. Breathing in and breathing out. And like I said, we're not using logic here. We don't use logic, especially in my sessions. We're just going to use the emotional, creative part of your mind. But what I want you to do is I want you just to imagine yourself. Any outdoor noises, any outside sounds, just let them just lift and drift away as if they weren't your responsibility. This is your time now. Just relaxing. I want you to imagine yourself just walking down some stairs. Focusing on your feet as you're walking down those stairs. 10. Just thinking, sliding into a deep state of relaxation. 9. Allowing your breath to take you into a deep sense of peace. 8. 7. Sliding down. 6. Just letting go. 5. 4. 3. The deepest parts of your mind. 2. 1. Remember, there's no right or wrong way to do this. And I want you to think of the first 2 people that come to your mind that are in your life now. Just think of those 2 people that are in your life now. Just 2. And you don't need to take any notes. You can keep your eyes closed. I don't want you to try and remember, try and make notes. I don't want you to do that. Just want you to think. And maybe you don't need to think, just let your unconscious mind go wherever it needs to go or wants to go. Just think of those 2 people in your life now and how you feel about those 2 people. What emotions they bring up, what memories they bring up, how they make you feel. Just stay with that for a moment. Let your mind lift, drift, wherever it needs to go. Feeling your breath just flowing through your body, your belly going up and down as your breath goes in and out. And now I want you to scan back in your mind, back in time to 2 people you knew in your teens or 20s, preferably your teens probably, in high school. 2 people you knew then, maybe you're in contact with them now, maybe you're not. How they made you feel. What associations you have with those people. Any thoughts, feelings, memories for those people. And maybe more people are coming up. That's okay. Maybe your mind's jumping around. That's okay. There's no right or wrong way to do this. And we've talked about giving back feelings. So if any of those people in that time gave you any feelings, just being aware of that. If you picked up any ideas, feelings, beliefs from these people, just being aware of that now. Like I said, making the unconscious conscious. Building on our own self-awareness. And now I want you to imagine going further back in time, deeper, back in time to people you knew when you were a kid. Young. Maybe in primary school. As a child. 2 people you knew, maybe you still know them, maybe you don't. How they made you feel. Any associations you had with them, any beliefs you picked up from them. Anything you want to give back. Just as you go back. 2 people you knew from that time. How they made you feel, the memories. Letting your mind go wherever it needs to go. And in your own time, whenever you're ready, just bringing yourself back to a more general awareness as I count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Whenever you're ready, opening your eyes. And if you want to make some notes so you don't forget this, you can. Just write down what happened. But I don't want you to consciously think, oh, I've got to remember this, so I can write it down. Like I said, sometimes our mind unconsciously get rid of stuff and we don't even need to be aware of it, so it doesn't really matter. Does anyone want to share anything? Anything that came up?
Should I be concerned that my thought went to my painter, Tony? He's present in my life. Pardon? He's in my life right now. He's been painting my basement. So yeah, that's where my first thought went to.
Is he doing a good job?
He's doing a fantastic job. He's a very nice gentleman.
Great.
Nice gentleman. I'm not quite sure why he decided to take any space in my mind at that point. Yes.
Probably because he's in your personal space, he's in your house.
Yes, probably. Yes, I'll have to tell him that. I'm sure that will frighten him to death if I mention this. And he was followed, so he's quite anodyne, and no problem. And then he was followed immediately by a student that I have serious concerns about. Serious concerns about.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then going back to your teens, anyone come up? Did anyone come up for your teens, Michelle?
Oh yes, my first very serious boyfriend, and then a very good female friend who I lost contact with 48 years ago, and who just contacted me through my big brother. She managed to find me through my older brother just now, recently. So that was it.
Yeah. And when you were a kid?
2 next door neighbors, 2 little girls I knew when I was 5 maybe.
And did you feel like any of these people influenced your beliefs, or were they all quite happy, positive memories?
Quite positive. Yeah. I mean, I had a bad breakup with my boyfriend at the time, but he was definitely, I think more than anything else, a very positive influence in my life. So no, there's no hard feelings anymore towards him. No.
Good. Anyone else want to share anything?
My kids came up first for now.
Yeah.
Which is obviously, this is all very positive. Made me feel happy and warm and needed.
Yeah. Teenagers?
Oh gosh, my best friend from school and another girl who I'm still in contact with from school. Weird with Jackie. It was she's really beautiful. Actually, I was quite jealous of her. but we always had so much fun. We used to laugh all the time. And Jane was much more serious but kind. Jackie wasn't very kind, but Jane was really kind. And still is, in fairness. And then childhood was my teacher, actually, Mrs. Mayock. I remember her so well.
Funny how we remember teachers' names, isn't it?
I remember, I can even see her, what she was wearing. She used to wear. And she was really kind and always really positive. And then I put one of my sisters, which wasn't quite so, was probably a bit negative.
Okay.
Thoughts.
Identifying just little things you might need to work on. And just noticing, you know, how those people affected our lives. And it's weird when you kind of think of people from different times in your life. It's like, why is that coming to my mind? You forget things. Anyone else want to share anything? No? Okay, well, it can be quite a private thing if people want to keep it to themselves. Okay, so Thursday, we're going to be doing a demo. Is and everyone available Thursday? Everyone here Thursday?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I might do a demo. Would everyone like that, on giving back feelings and things like that?
Yeah,
that'd be good.
Yeah. And expressing the unexpressed. So we'll do expressing the unexpressed. And giving back feelings. I think that's what we'll work on Thursday.
Okay.
So if anyone wants to think of something in the week, well, the next couple of days, they want something to work on.
I have one we can do for the expressing the unexpressed.
Okay, perfect. So you're happy to volunteer for Thursday?
I'm going to volunteer now before I change my mind.
Okay, we'll hold you to it.
Yeah, make me do it.
Well, you know, there's no judgment here, and there's always anything you've been through with therapists, we're all going to hear hundreds of times anyway. So you know, there's no judgment here, Hattie. Okay, good, well done. Okay, so we'll do that on Thursday. Any questions before we leave?
No.
Okay,
nope.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Everyone, well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye. Bye.
Bye.